Rands. I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. Got to make sure those tubes are working. Sometimes they don't work. And then that just means yours truly is sitting here rambling off into the distance. And there's nobody on the other end. It's quite frustrating. But it looks like the tubes are working. Wow, that's tremendous. That means we can go ahead and get started. And let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about Donald Trump's gag order battle and the polls, because he's crushing in several swing states, and that's got the Democrats very nervous. But he's also battling for his free speech rights, and we know that the campaign is moving forward, and that the courts, and in particular the Democrats, people like Letitia James, Judge Engoron, and his GF, Allison Greenfield, and others, are trying to gag him, trying to keep him from being able to speak about certain things, including the sham prosecutions and attacks that are launched against him. And so we are going to go through the latest that's happening in New York. The gag order fight has a slight setback, but it's only slight. Trump can continue this forward if he wants to. The question is he going to want to? So you're going to see a bunch of news today about Democrats excited. Trump lost 2 attempts to deal with the gag order. And it's like, yeah, that's true. He did get rejected twice, but they're kind of nuanced. So he can take another bite at the apple if he wants to, but we don't know if he's going to want to, because the case is basically over there in New York, right? They've kept him gagged this entire time. We're going to come back for, I think, closing arguments in January. Tishy's going to explain to us that the case is basically closed and done. We've got an update from Christopher Kise, Trump's lawyer. And so we're going to see what the latest is out of that Court of Appeals before we jump over to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, talking about immunity. And they've scheduled a briefing. We have CNN reacting to the upcoming schedule because we know we've got a real predicament for the government. Whether they can hold that March 4th trial date or whether something else is going to happen, we'll see. Trump is asking a very good question. Why didn't they bring these cases and these charges 3 years ago? Huh? Good question. We got Clavicle Girl coming up. Liz Cheney's crying about her sons and the future of America. And then we're going to hear from the polls that show Trump is just crushing in the swing states, which is why they're so panicked about this, because they don't want him to get in charge of the DOJ and abuse it like they have. Now, we're going to go through all that. Before we jump over to Trump's former lawyer, you know, this guy, Michael Cohen, has a big bone to pick with Trump and has joined kind of the MSNBC crowd in recent years, hinging his entire career on going after Donald Trump. Well, he is out, and he was in court apparently today, and our friend Inner City Press was reporting on this. Says, I just ran into Michael Cohen, and he's not looking happy, all right? Not happy with what's going on over there. Why? Well, it turns out his lawyer might have used some artificial intelligence or something. We don't really know. But there was this letter that he submitted that was requesting early termination of Michael Cohen's probation to get him off of custody so he can get back to his normal life, blah, blah, blah. And he was requesting termination, and apparently he cited to some cases that don't really exist. And so the court issued an order to show cause, which means you're in trouble. If you're a lawyer and you get an order to show cause, you're like, is that for me? Darn it. And, it happens even to the best of us. But you get them, you got to show up and explain yourself. And the court's trying to get them to explain, where did these fake cases come from? Oops. I don't know if he got them from Claudine Gay from Harvard or something. So we'll go through all of that. Then we're also going to see that in our final segment, we're going to see what happened in the aftermath of this impeachment battle and this subpoena snub. But it turns out that Karine is going to confirm for us that Joe Biden, the president, was colluding with Hunter in this entire response. In fact, you could say that they together obstructed Congress because we have a lawful subpoena from the Oversight Committee. And Karine says that Joe knew what Hunter was going to say and do before he did it. We're asking ourselves, that's very convenient. I thought this was all separate and apart, and there's, no funny business going on here. And that might be collusion and obstruction of a congressional subpoena, which is Jonathan Turley is going to point out for us in this nice article that he wrote, that is obstruction and you are busted, buddy boy. And so we'll see if that goes anywhere. Now, Karine is also answering some questions about this today. You can see that's a clip from yesterday. Then she's out today. Hey, what do you think about all this? They're colluding to cover up the Biden crime family. And that's really what we saw is Hunter just kind of came out, fell on the sword. Daddy had nothing to do with it. Like everything that you did was based on daddy. So, okay. So anyways, Comer responded to this. We've got some other clips from around the Democratic purview. A couple of short ones. Ian Sams, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Shifty Schiff, and Eric Swalwell. That's a lot. We'll see how fast we can get through them. And then Jim Jordan's going to come out, and I'm still not real happy with his answers. I know I was a little bit hard on him yesterday, but I'm still a little hard on him. He's like, well, I think we're going to maybe get to contempt probably sometime. And I love Jim Jordan, but we got to hold him accountable. And Byron is also responding, saying no immunity for Hunter. We're ready to go. And then Comer came out this afternoon with a late update and says, Hunter must comply. And so they kind of got their messaging back in order, and then they came back out and they're, I guess, unified with a statement. So as you can see, my friends, we got some good stuff to get to today. I am grateful that you are joining us. It is a beautiful Thursday. I hope your week is rocking and rolling. Tomorrow's a Friday. We're looking forward to that one. This morning, we had a great members only stream over on Locals. We'd love it if you joined us on our Locals this morning. We talked about kind of the latest that's happening out there, but we spent some time talking about that Vivek clip, right? It's going around right now. It's got millions of views on the X platform. And he just crushed, January 6th narrative. He crushed the Whitmer narrative, and it was very beautiful to see. So we talked about that this morning. For members, we do members-only streams in the morning. We do Saturday streams, and so if you want to grab some extra content, talk about some other things other than what you get here, the usual fare, come and join us. watchingthewatchers.locals.com is the web address, and here, let's put that up on the screen so that you can join us. We also, if you join as a member on the YouTubes, what you'll get is access to a private Telegram group, and you can join us in the after parties as well. As soon as we're done on the live shows, we go to our members only after party where we hang out and debrief the day's activities, and it's fun. Get to know each other a little bit better. We'd love to see you join us. We also have our new shop, which is available. And so if you go to robertgovea.com/shop, you can see this tab right up here at the top. You can access our brand new shop, my friends, and I'm super excited about it. And this stuff is flying off the shelves, and so it's really cool to see it. People are liking the sandals, which is hilarious. So people are ordering the sandals, and they're great quality. They look good. I put some good time into these things, okay? And I designed them. I put the whole thing together, all right? And you can see I even hid Bill Clinton in the Hillary Clinton sandals, right? He's tucked away up in there, and they're good. I mean, they're nice. They're printed well. I don't know how long that everything's going to hold up, but it's kind of a fun thing. And so we got the Joe Biden version of that as well. And if you guys like these, I was thinking about doing a Crackhead Hunter edition and maybe a Cackling Kamala edition. We'll see. But those are available. The Joe Bidens have Hunter hidden in there. And of course, we have the Watcher hat, which is available. And people are loving the hat too. And the hats, of course, our Watcher symbol is explained here. It's a cross between Libertas and Justitia, creating the Watcher who is watching over our society with the unbalanced scales of justice, the sword cutting through the bonds of ignorance. And these are all custom stitched in the United States, and they look great. I mean, they really, look great. This is the one, usually my daily driver, although I went with the black one today, and I'm enjoying it. They look good, feel good. So check them out, robertgovea.com/shop. And thank you for supporting us, right? It's a great way to support the show. It's a great way to get something rather than, me, plugging something else. You can support us, and we're grateful for that. All right. And so, without any further ado, let's get right into it because we got some business to attend to, and we're starting with the gag orders. Donald Trump crushing in the polls, but he's still battling the gag that's limiting his free speech in the middle of his campaign. And he had two minor setbacks today. And the question is he going to even continue to battle this now that the New York case is mostly concluded? We've got two rejections from the New York Court of Appeals. Trump filed challenging the gag order that was instituted by Judge Engoron against his GF, Allison Greenfield, saying, don't you dare talk about her, okay? She's allowed to pass me love notes in the middle of court if she wants to. And when Trump was objecting to that, he gagged him, fined him, sanctioned him multiple times, and then even extended that gag to the rest of Trump's team, his counsel. So what we're going to find is that Trump appealed these things, and those appeals are coming back down. Now, a lot of people on the left are very excited about this. You'll see a lot of headlines out there. Trump lost twice. Wow, it's a record. Who loses twice in one day? Give me a break, all right? We're going to go through it. They're not that big of a deal. Basically, they're saying, Trump, you can go back down and use this vehicle to get back up to us, and then we'll consider it. So the question is, do they want to do that? Here is what the filing looks like. We'll see what Tish says about it. Then we'll get some reaction from Trump, Cheney, and we'll take a look at those polls that are showing Trump is still getting away from the Democrats and everybody in the polls in all the various swing states that ultimately matter. So here is what the first filing looks like. And this one is talking about really Trump using the wrong vehicle, just saying, all right, there is another mechanism that you can use, and it's not this one. Here is what they said. Coming out of the Supreme Court of the state of New York, this is the appellate division, so it's one up above Engoron, saying here, in the matter of Donald Trump against Areola, they list the attorneys. We got Alina Abba in the House, along with a bunch of others. And there's Tishy. Now, this is all up on appeal, and they say, all right. So this is the Court of Appeals writing, saying, pursuant to the rules, we see that Trump and his people are moving to annul and to vacate 4 orders from the judge Engoron. And those things were entered respectively back in October on the first gag order. Gagged him, right? Gagged him there. Then he issued a supplemental gag order, gagged everyone else. Then he issued the first contempt order, then the second contempt order, and then it went on. Now they say, this is what Judge Engoron said at the outset. He said, consider this statement a gag order, forbidding all parties from posting, emailing, or speaking publicly about any members of my staff. Engoron, don't talk about my GF. Okay, Judge. And then he said later in November, he said, I hereby order that all counsel, even the lawyers, right, can't talk about it, are prohibited from making any public statements in or out of court that refer to any confidential communications. You see how he did that? Those are love notes and foot taps, all right? That's her walking over there doing whatever. We don't know what she's doing because they moved the camera so we can't see. After the lawyers were complaining, the judge is like, can you move that camera and that one too? A little further. No, keep going. And we're good. All right, she can't see the massages now. Perfect. Okay, so it says in any form between my staff and me. And he calls her the principal law clerk. And he says that they have a very interesting professional entanglement relationship that you and I wouldn't understand. All right, we're not judges and we don't have principal law clerks. Okay, Judge. So they say here that those orders prohibited Trump and their lawyers from speaking publicly about the members of Engoron's staff, in this case, his GF, his Greenfield. And they imposed fines against Trump for violating the first 2 gag orders on 2 occasions. Trump wants them dismissed without costs. As they say here, they say as seeking reviews of orders are not reviewable under the rule. So here's what they're saying. The petition is unanimously dismissed, right? And it's a technical reason why. They say this is the rule. It's 78, Article 78. Here's why. We can't review this right now. They say, and it's a technical thing. They say here, this law is a codification of a common law writ of prohibition, which is available to restrain an unwarranted assumption of jurisdiction to prevent a court from exceeding its powers. Now, in their second, third, and fourth causes of action, Trump is seeking a writ of prohibition to vacate and annul the gag orders. Now, they say initially, okay, we wrote that the supplemental gag order only prohibits statements made by the attorneys. We note that the gag order only prohibits statements made by counsel, not by Trump. Now, inasmuch as the gag order does not apply to Trump, they lack standing to challenge it. And as petitioners demand a writ of prohibition here, the Court of Appeals has found that the extraordinary remedy of a writ of prohibition lies only where there is a clear legal right to relief. They don't have standing, so there is no clear legal right to relief. And so permitting the liberal use of this would undermine the other mechanisms that you have to go through. So this is an extraordinary remedy that you're asking us to consider here, and we can only do that when there's a substantial claim. So they say, look, when we determine whether or not we're going to do something like this, we got to consider several things. One, the gravity of the harm, whether the power can be corrected. Now here, the gravity of the potential harm is small, they say. I completely disagree with this. So they're fleshing out a balancing test for us. What do we need to do here, whether we're going to grant Trump's claim at the appellate level? They have to consider, what's the gravity of the harm? Well, here they say it's small. The gag order is narrow, and it only stops Trump from talking about his greenfield. I would totally disagree with that and say, no, Trump is commenting on a corrupt prosecution, and this person is just one enabler of it, and a pretty important one. She's basically the co-judge. So it's as important as being able to comment about the judge. She's literally sitting on the bench, and the attorneys have an issue about it. So you can comment on, I would argue, everything that's problematic about a judicial proceeding. You don't just get to have a court clerk who can just do whatever she wants, and then you can't comment on that because they happen to be staff. Okay, so you just hire the most corrupt people in the world as your employee, call them your principal law clerk, and they can do whatever they want? No. Anyways, that's their take. Now further, while the gag order and the contempt orders were not issued pursuant to formal motion practice, they are reviewable under the ordinary appellate process. And for these reasons, this is what they say, right? This is the technical thing. It's a writ of prohibition is not the proper vehicle for challenging the gag order. So that's it, right? It's not like you can't challenge it. It's just the way that they're doing it right now is not appropriate. As to the first cause of action, what you filed, this is clearing that this is not permitted. This type of review is not permitted unless there is an order that is punishing a contempt committed in the presence of the court. So they're just taking them back to this section of the law, and they say, look, the contempt orders here that came out from Judge Engoron, amazing. Those were not issued summarily, right? So Judge Engoron issued a different type of contempt, like this fancy Engoron contempt, nor was the contempt committed in the presence of the court. And so you can't challenge it this way. To the extent that there may have been appealable issues with respect to any of the procedures the court implemented in opposing the financial sanctions, the proper method of review would be to move to vacate the contempt orders and then appeal from the denial of those motions. All right. So basically saying, we don't know, right? The court, this is Susana Molina Rojas. We don't know whether there even were appealable issues. We're not ruling on this, whether there is anything that was problematic here, but you took the wrong vehicle. If you want to go do this, what you need to do is go move to vacate with Engoron. So go back to Engoron, tell Engoron, move to vacate your loser contempt orders, and he denies it, and then you appeal the denial. All right, so it's just very technical. All right, that's it. Now, this constitutes the decision and order of the Court of Appeals. Great, got it. So that's Susana Molina Rojas. Now, a lot of people are going to say, that's Trump, right? They're finding that he's got no right to challenge or whatever, right? It doesn't say that. It says, no, it says basically Trump's people just filed the wrong vehicle. And this whole thing is really messed up, by the way, in the first place. Like everything that Engoron is doing, how could you possibly know how to categorize it? It's all unprecedented. This dude is absolutely out of control. Just prohibiting lawyers in the middle of court. You're prohibited. You're prohibited. Don't do it, Chris. Don't do it, is what he was screaming at one of the defense attorneys. Like, don't do it, Chris, verbatim. He's like, I have to file a motion. He's, don't do it. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? That's our job. So anyways, right. So I think this is the Court of Appeals being very clever, just saying, hey, Trump and your people didn't file it appropriately using the appropriate vehicle, and therefore you don't get the right to challenge it. Now, simultaneously, this is where they're saying there were two back-to-back. Okay, so the same court, the same appellate division, they're saying Trump again. In the matter, we know it's everybody versus Engoron, and Tishy as the respondent. And so in addition to that, they're saying, guess what? Trump also filed a request to get out of the Court of Appeals and go directly to the Supreme Court of New York. So he wants to leapfrog them. And they're saying you can't do that either. Okay, a petition was filed with this court trying to annul all of the prior orders and the gag orders. And then Engoron issued another supplemental gag order. But an order of this court and an order of this court that denied Trump's motion for a stay of the enforcement was also submitted. And then Trump moved to appeal to the Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in New York, and entered here. They wanted an expedited resolution of the petition. Now, upon reading and filing the papers with respect to the motion and due deliberation having been had, the court says it is ordered that the motion for leave to appeal to the highest level is denied. Why? That branch of motion for expedited resolution of the petition is denied as moot. Why? Because they're also signing the other appeal, the one that we just read, which is saying that one was denied because it was the wrong vehicle. Okay, that's all. So a lot of people out there are just, Trump is losing everything. Not really. She's just saying, well, you can't go to the Supreme Court yet, but if you go back down and file the appropriate vehicle, then you can get denied, because what's going to happen is Engoron is obviously going to deny it. He issued contempt, file a motion to vacate the contempt. Okay. Engoron denies that, then you appeal the denial. Now then, under New York law, all the different rules, whatever they are, CPLR 7, whatever, it's all going to fit, and the court will say, then we'll, theoretically review those issues. Now the question at this point is, does Trump even care? Okay, because the case is essentially over. Here is what Tishy Lay Tish had to say on X. She said, today, on the 13th, we rested our case against Donald Trump for years of financial fraud. Now, the judge already found that Trump engaged in significant fraud, right? And you missed all that because that all happened behind closed doors. Nobody was available or a part of that. That was just the judge ruling on himself. And they say that Trump unjustly enriched himself and his family. Now, this trial revealed the full extent of the fraud and Trump's ability to disprove it. And our friend Viva, right next door on Rumble, says, how did the judge find fraud before you rested your case? That's strange. How'd that happen, Tishy Lay Tish? Oh, that's right. You're both filthy, corrupt communists. Our friend Amuse says, seems really suspect that Trump was found guilty before trial. The fact that he was denied a jury also seems unfair. Also, since you only make $220,000 a year, how are you worth $15 million? And so shout out to Viva and Amuse. Make sure you're following them on X and everywhere. All right. And so that is what's happening, right? The case is over. They've gagged Trump. They don't, there's really not going to be much left of this case. Here is what Christopher Kise, this is Trump's lawyer. This is what he says about this. Here he wrote, all right, America, during the almost 11 weeks of trial, the testimony of President Trump, world-class experts and bankers and experts and others involved in complex financial transactions at issue, they confirm what was clear from the outset. Namely, that there was no fraud, there were no victims, and there has simply been no harm. Now, just as in the Attorney General's failed case against Exxon, loser, not a single witness came into court and claimed fraud, harm, or damage of any kind. To the contrary, writes Trump's defense, the evidence established the financial statements included values that were conservative and incorporated comprehensive disclaimers. Now, the statements were in compliance with governing accounting standards. The banks had no issues with those statements and viewed President Trump as a premier client. The loans were paid back in full with millions in interest, and the parties to the complex transactions were satisfied fully with the highly profitable private sector deal they negotiated and successfully completed. Now, the trial itself did little to instill public confidence in the integrity of the New York court system. At this point, the trial must, and the trial court should, follow the law and the indisputable evidence and put an end to the Attorney General's manifestly unjust political crusade. If not, President Trump remains confident that the appellate division will ultimately correct the innumerable errors and rein in a meddling Attorney General intent on abusing the legal system and driving profitable businesses out. of New York. Christopher Kise, Trump's lawyer. Good comment there, right? Trial's basically over now, so there's not going to be much else to talk about. So Trump is still gagged, and we'll see what happens when trial is back in session, when they come back for closing arguments. Of course, thanks for subscribing. We'll cover it when they do. Now, elsewhere in courts of appeals, we've got a lot of other updates. Trump is also challenging the Chutkan ruling in D.C., and they've issued a briefing schedule as well. You can see here they've got this coming from the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Cases United States of America versus Donald Trump. Quick filing. We've got actions now. We had a battle over whether this case was going to be expedited, and we're arguing about presidential immunity, amongst other things, double jeopardy, and whether essentially this case is going to be dismissed. Now, Jack Smith has also submitted this to the Supreme Court, but this is also the Court of Appeals, and they're trying to go fast, and he's trying to get the Supreme Court to go faster than them because they want to keep the March 4th trial date on the calendar. If they can keep it anchored in there, they're going to be very happy about it. Now, I think the likelihood of that is low, given that the courts have, even Chutkan's agreeing that these appeals cause a stay on everything. But here, the Court of Appeals has agreed at least to move quickly. So they are ordering that this appeal be expedited. Here's the following briefing schedule. We've got Trump's brief by, who filed this? Well, anyways, yeah, I think Trump's brief is due by the 23rd, and then Jack Smith's brief is due by the 30th. Joint appendix due by the 23rd, and then a reply by, no, okay, here it is. Trump is due the 23rd, then Jack Smith, then Trump's reply on the 2nd. So it's further ordered that any oral argument be scheduled before this panel. The parties will be informed of a date of oral argument, okay? So oral arguments then will not even be until January. And as we talked about yesterday, we are going to count the days between 12/12, when Chutkan initiated her stay, essentially. Okay, she came out and said, nope, was it the 12th or the 13th? Either one. Let's call it the 13th. So on the 13th, she said everything is stayed, and Trump is going to claim that all the time between this date and whenever she gets the case back is excluded, that you cannot count it. So that they're going to want to calculate all of these dates and then add it to the March 4th date. So however many days that is. We need that much more time. And we're going to start, calculating the days. And I mean that literally, like calculate the days in criminal courts. So that's why Trump, in his response, when they were saying to Judge Chutkan that everything is paused, they had a massive list. Okay, interviews are paused, subpoenas are paused, suppression motions are paused. It's all paused because they're going to say, we didn't have time to work on any of this, no matter whatever length of time that is. So from the 12th, at least the reply brief is going to get us all the way into January 2nd. That's nice. And then oral argument's going to come after that. And then after oral argument, they're going to move fast on that, by the way. So oral argument will be quick. And then we'll see a ruling quick. And then it's going to come back down to Chutkan. So maybe second week of January. So we'll get maybe a full month, 30 days. Now the 30 days, we'll take that March date into April, right? Will she bump it back into April? I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. So they're going to move fast, right? So we are seeing some questions about that. Now, they say here, appellant should raise all issues and arguments in the opening brief. The court ordinarily will not consider issues and arguments raised for the first time in the reply brief. And to enhance clarity of their briefs, we urge the limit use of abbreviations, including acronyms. We don't like all the letters. Briefs should not contain acronyms that are not widely known. These are our rules. Don't make us look it up. Now, parties are strongly encouraged to hand deliver the paper copies of their brief to the clerk's office. Filing by mail may delay the processing. Counsel are reminded that if filing by mail, use a class of mail that's least first class, blah, blah, blah. And they say all briefs and appendices must contain the date that the case is scheduled for oral argument at the top of the cover. And so they're going to issue oral argument dates later. And they're going to move fast, okay? Because the D.C. Circuit also wants to get this thing moving. They do not want Trump. I think they also want the trial to go. And I don't know what judges these are, but I think, largely we've been finding that they're Obama-Biden appointed judges in general. So that is the schedule. Now, it's going to be going fast, right? And Trump is asking for delays on this. And the Supreme Court is also weighing in on a lot of this. Now, here is CNN talking about the schedule. This is Jake Tapper, and he is going to be explaining that there is more meetings and conversations about how this is all going to play out. Here is CNN.
Let's move to the news today. A federal judge has just paused Donald Trump's 2024 election interference case, which could lead his March 2024 trial to be delayed. Earlier today, Trump lawyers compared special counsel Jack Smith to the Grinch for trying to keep the trial on schedule. Here is
for trying to steal American justice from the Christmas tree.
What they wrote. This is an honest-to-God court filing. My hand to God. Quote,
true. We read
this
it.
proposed schedule would require
great.
attorneys and support staff to work round the clock through the holidays, inevitably disrupting family and travel plans. It is as if the special counsel growled with his Grinch fingers, nervously drumming, I must find some way to keep Christmas from coming, but how? So the lawyers.
Indictments, Jake. Indictments. Indicting your political opponents. How can I stop Christmas from coming? Classified document prosecutions.
Of Whoville could have a bleak Christmas, I guess is the argument. What are the real world and political consequences and legal consequences if the trial is delayed, and how likely do you think it is?
There is a real possibility the trial will be delayed. I think that the March 4th start date has seemed aspirational for some time. The question is, how long? Does it start, say, before the Republican nominating convention in mid-July? Does it start at some point later in the summer? Would the judge feel okay starting it in August? And there's so many variables built into this. It's very hard to say when this will begin. It is still seen as the likeliest trial to start before the election, if not the only one. But there's a lot of moving parts.
Oh, man, that is, that's a hard way of saying it's unlikely to happen at that time because we start getting into the trial season. Like March was the earliest I think that they could go. We even have Iowa and New Hampshire, by the way, also came before March, I believe. Then it's Super Tuesday. So if she bumps it, then we've got the RNC stuff. Then we've got like literally the election. We know even the DOJ is like hesitant, they said, about prosecuting people in the run up to the election, which is why they scammed us all on Hunter Biden. Oh, we can't investigate it. The election's right around the corner. Of course, they didn't want to tell us that, right? So, or didn't want to expose the investigation, pursue a trial, let us know what was happening because it's too close to the election. Now, that was all for Hunter. They covered all that up. But with Trump, like they kind of are scheduling it for the election. In fact, they charged him so that they could ask for trials to be loaded up right during the election specifically. And so Trump is asking about this. Why did they do all this 3 years ago? Would have been nice if they would have just maybe brought it. We could have settled this all. He didn't charge him. He didn't charge himself. He's not the one asking for all of these complexities to be intermingled with one another. Nobody asked them to charge him so that we had to come to a head about free speech and campaign rights and political rights in America versus the normal operation of criminal proceedings. They initiated that. Here's Trump asking, why are they doing it now? Well, we all know why, because it's political. This is Trump.
We got to rush it. And, now they're saying, let's rush it to the Supreme Court. We got to rush it. They could have started 3 years ago. Nothing changed. They could have started 3 years ago, but they didn't. They started just recently with this crap. They could have brought this lawsuit, Brenna, 3 years ago, right after I left. It's been 3 years. But they didn't do that. And now they're saying, we have to go immediately before the Supreme Court. This thing would have all been over with 2 years ago. But they waited, and then they saw I was running, and they waited, and then they saw I was hot, and they filed lawsuits. These are very dishonest people. That's called election interference. And now they're fighting like hell because they want to try and get a guilty plea from the Supreme Court of the United States, which I can't imagine because you have presidential immunity. But strange things happen. But they want to get that because that's the only way they're going to win the election. It's a very sick thing. But think of it. They waited for years. In fact, nobody thought, everyone was saying they're never going to bring any charges. Most people said they're not going to bring them because they don't have anything. And then all of a sudden we started getting hit with these lawsuits. And in fact,
yeah, that's not what we were saying. We were saying, oh, they are coming, man, because they they couldn't not charge him. Like they were in too deep. You know, they were really saying insurrection, end of America. Like their base was so riled up that if they didn't deliver charges, man, there would have been a mutiny inside the Democratic Party. And so they ultimately delivered, and I think they've bitten off more than they can chew because they started the whole thing on a false premise, like that he's an insurrectionist and this is all the end of America. It's like, obviously you can't deliver on that promise. Don't act like such a psycho and you won't have to backfill your claims. So here's Trump now asking a very good question. Why not 3 years ago? Obviously, it's because it's political. One of the main people behind the political partisan hack attack is Liz Cheney, obviously one of the people leading the fake, illegally constituted January 6th Select Committee, same woman who's thrown out of Wyoming on her butt for being terrible, and the same woman who is contemplating running for president, who's shilling a book now. She went inside Jen Psaki on MSNBC, and here is what it sounded like.
One of the things that Trump has threatened or has been reported is that he will seek retribution. There's a threat of retribution, and that he will go after his enemies. Are you worried you're going to be on that list?
I don't think about that.
You should be.
Because I think it's so important.
You should be.
For the whole country, for the future of the country, for the future of our kids, that he never get to that place. One of the really stark moments for me in the last couple of years was having dinner with my husband and my sons and looking at my sons and realizing, maybe they won't be able to take for granted that we live in a country with a peaceful transfer of power. And that sort of sudden realization that, we've all generations of Americans have known that wasn't something that you had to worry about. Now we do have to worry about it. And so I think making sure that...
Are your sons also worried about free and fair elections? Are they concerned about rigged elections and rigged, propagandized, entrapment type affairs where our government is ensnaring its own citizens so that people like you, Liz, can exploit political narratives for your own ends? Yeah. So it's a curious conversation between her and Jen. Let's wrap this up.
We kind of pull back from that abyss is what I'm very much focused on.
Not worried about the enemies list.
Well, yeah, I think it's not an enemies list, but it's a list of people who maybe committed crimes. We don't know for sure, but I've got a lot of questions about what the January 6th Select Committee did with a lot of the evidence. Why did that evidence go missing? Why are Congress people sending letters saying, hey, can we get copies of those video depositions that you took? You had videos, right? Why are they deleted? Is Cheney obstructing congressional record keeping? I don't know, but there should be an investigation about it. And I want to know whether she had internal conversations with people like Cassidy Hutchinson, like witness tampering, to get her to change her story. Was this other criminality that Liz Cheney was involved in? Because this woman really changed her story. And so maybe it's worth an investigation. It's worth investigating the investigators, right? We have internal affairs all over this country where agencies look into themselves. Can anybody look into the January 6th committee and see if they committed any crimes? Maybe it's time for us to do that. That's all. It's not an enemies list. It's not Trump being a tyrant. It's exactly what they're doing. They formed committees to go after their political opponent and create a bunch of fake crimes for them. Some that even are going to be dismissed. I would imagine when 1512 gets heard in the Supreme Court, when they redefine corruptly as it's supposed to be, because our DOJ misinterpreted it intentionally so that they could go gobble up a bunch of innocent people and charge them with crimes and wreck their lives. So how about the criminality for that? Can we go look at this? Malicious prosecution and deprivation of rights for illegal prosecutions throughout this country? Yeah, I think that they should be concerned about that because they're involved in a giant, massive conspiracy. Maybe we should get RICO.
Everything that Trump says is extremely dangerous. He has said extremely dangerous things for years that have gotten people killed. As we reach this next election cycle, I truly believe that if he is reelected, then the likelihood that this is the last election that we are voting under our Constitution is very, very likely.
That's it, man.
All of that being said,
By the way, this is a witness, okay? This is a witness. She testified in the January 6th committee hearing. She was working with Trump at the time. Apparently, she was in a car somewhere, or she heard a story working at the White House about somebody reaching over and grabbing a Secret Service member by the clavicle. I think Trump grabbed somebody by the clavicle. before Melania was hanging out of the helicopter ladder with her AR-15 and the cigar hanging out of her mouth. We're taking over the Capitol. Come on, Baron. You know, whatever that was. So she invented this whole story after she was working there. And she's allowed to talk on MSNBC? Well, that's weird. Can Trump comment about her? Can he respond to her? Oh, no, he can't, because any reasonably foreseeable witnesses are off limits. So once again, okay, they are censoring Trump's ability to respond while all these hack witnesses are out here running their mouths all over cable news. Trump can't comment about them. This is the same type of censorship garbage that we saw in 2020. Okay, they're allowed to speak. They did it on the social media companies at the time. Okay, they were allowed to post on X. They were allowed on Twitter at the time. They were allowed to post on social media companies. They didn't get censored like we did for medical misinformation and for election misinformation and all that garbage. It's the same thing. Now, Trump can't speak, but they can speak. Their voices get amplified. Everybody else's gets deplatformed. So Trump can't respond to this, but she's allowed to go hang out with MSNBC.
Donald Trump has showed us who he is, and he's told us who he is for a very long time. At the end of the administration, he talked about implementing Schedule F, which is essentially a program where he would be able to fire up to 50,000 civil servants.
Good. Oh, I wish he would
replace
have.
them with loyalists.
Right.
Gosh.
If reports are accurate, there are also groups that are putting together databases of Trump loyalists.
Good.
To
Good.
backfill those positions.
Good.
So right then and there, we're already looking at a government that is going to be completely stacked with new government employees that aren't tenured and people that are inherently loyal to Donald Trump. That is not what our country is based upon. Everything that Trump says is extremely dangerous.
That sounds great to me. Sounds like a pretty good plan to me. That's what happens when you win office. Obviously, you know that, Cassidy. That's what Joe Biden did. That's what happens when you win. You get rid of everybody else and you put your own people in. Now they're talking to us like a regular election is like the end of America. Do you see how this is also changing, by the way? You know, if Trump wins, they're going to say, you know what Trump's going to do? He's going to appoint members to his cabinet. And he's going to pick people that he wants to be in his cabinet of the presidency. And these people are going to come in and talk to him every day. And these are going to be anybody he wants. And so we're all going to die because he's picking a cabinet. You go, well, that's what happens when you win, dum-dum. That's the point. But you see, like, they're even criminalizing the election itself. Trump's going to prosecute his political opponents. He's allowed to do that. You guys started it. You know, we don't want political prosecutions in this country, but you guys did it 4 times. Hello. He can do it at least, let's say, 4 times, just to be fair. He'll do 3, just to be fair. He'll make him good. And he's going to go after some big ones. And, we'll call it even. How about that? Now, that's Cassidy. And why are they so freaked out? Because Trump is winning in the polls. Here's the latest story from The Hill. You see, they're getting a little bit nervous about this. Former President Trump is leading Biden in 7 swing states, dealing the latest blow to Biden's re-election campaign just weeks ahead of the start of the primary voting season. The poll was published on Thursday by Morning Consult and Bloomberg News. Both came out, found Biden is trailing Trump by an average of 5.28 percentage points in the 7 swing states that were surveyed. North Carolina, Georgia, Wisconsin, Nevada, Michigan, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. Now, those are important states. Now, Trump held his strongest lead over Biden in North Carolina, 11 points, followed by Georgia, 7 points. Those are big numbers. Now, the former president is leading in Wisconsin by 6, Nevada by 5. Smallest leads are in Arizona by 4 and 3. All right, we got some work to do here, my friends. Now, the results are from a hypothetical ballot that includes at least frontrunners like Kennedy and others. And so it was a Morning Consult poll going all the way up through December 6th. And so, as things get more precarious in this country, as many expect them to, we'll see if that continues to materialize. So Donald Trump is looking pretty good in the polls. He's having a battle over the GAG. The GAG is going to continue, it sounds like, for the foreseeable future. And we'll continue to cover this litigation and all the rest of the Trump trials, my friends. So thank you for subscribing to our channel, wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for inviting a friend or family member to come over here and join us when we go live. We'd love you to invite them so they can see what's really happening. And we'll look forward to seeing you and them on the next one. All right. And now, let's take a look at Trump's former lawyer. Man, this is some good stuff. Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, his lawyer was busted, been ordered to come to court in what's an order to show cause, something that lawyers do not like to get. It's basically the judge saying, can you please come to the principal's office, please? I'd like to talk to you about your conduct. And this involves a request by Cohen and his lawyers to terminate his probation. He wanted to get off probation for his criminality. You know, the guy's a liar, a convicted perjurer. He was the key witness against Trump in Tishy's case in New York, maybe the sole reason the case was even brought. Now, this guy is not happy. Our friend Inner City Press was reporting this. He says, here's an update. Just ran into Michael Cohen leaving 40 Foley Square by the side entrance. He did not look happy. Why is that? Well, because the judge is calling his lawyer to court. And it's not a nice reason to go to court. So I want to share with you what the original letter said so that you can see some of the alleged fakery. Here is what Cohen's lawyer sent into the judge. And this came out, filed with the court, 11/29. It's a 5-pager. It says, Dear Judge Furman, in the case of United States versus Michael Cohen. Now, please be advised that my name is David Schwartz, and I represent Michael Cohen. You see, he signed the letter down here. Now, judge is not happy with him. He says, okay, here's the deal, Your Honor. I represent Cohen for the sole purpose of seeking intervention in trying to get Cohen off of supervised release, right? Get him off of probation. Now, December 6th, we made an application to you, and you said it was premature. And the court stated that the decision is close. You weren't sure, but you said, no, it's too soon. But you said file it again. And we filed it again in June. And again, you denied our second request. You said, you know, he hasn't shown compelling reasons why he should be off this. And so we again denied it. Okay. So Cohen is really trying to get off this. And now watch what happens. Now, Mr. Cohen's term of supervised release commenced on November 22nd. He's now served more than 2/3 of his 3-year term. We believe he's got 2 years done. Please let him off. And here's why. They say there's been a substantial change in circumstances, okay? Michael Cohen, he testified at Tishy Letitia's trial for 2 days straight in the case against Donald Trump. And that's where Attorney General Tishy credited Michael Cohen for the whole investigation. We wouldn't have even been able to do this without Michael Cohen, said Tish. He endured 2 days of grueling cross-examination and his testimony has been widely lauded and publicized. Now, the United States Attorney in our applications has continued to challenge the value of the cooperation of Cohen. The U.S. Attorney's like, who cares? Well, who cares what he did? I'm not giving him, no less probation. Now, they say, because he testified, and you see how they're leveraging this, like they're telling the judge, now I don't know who this judge is, but they're like, Judge, he's talking about Trump badly. He's testifying badly against Trump. Now, with this new testimony, there can be no doubt of Mr. Cohen's continued commitment to comply with all government agencies. Cohen's unwavering cooperation with the multitude of the investigative bodies, including 7 congressional hearings, 23 meetings this dude had with Manhattan DA, 2 days of grand jury testimony in front of the New York jurors, as well as 2 days of draining testimony with Tishy Letitia's trial in New York. They say this has played a pivotal role in uncovering and prosecuting wrongdoing, right? This is all the things this dude is doing to take out Trump. Now, his willingness to come forward and provide truthful accounts of his experience, despite the dangers and harm that it might cause him, shows that he has an exceptional level of remorse and a commitment to upholding the law that cannot be denied by anybody. Specifically, he was on the stand for more than 10 hours, and he provided damning evidence of Trump's organized, alleged business misconduct. Now, I want to pause for a quick minute and just take a look. Judge Furman, let's see who he was appointed by. Judge Jesse Furman. I want to see who he was appointed by because I want to see how they are writing. Are they increasing the anti-Trump language because he is a Trump appointee or not? Or does it matter? Let's see. Who appointed him? Here, he earned a bachelor's degree. He went to Yale Law School. He served as a district court judge. He clerked there, and then he clerked for the associate judge. He was appointed by Barack Obama, right? So that makes sense. So they're writing for the judge. Barack Obama appointed this guy. He's in the Southern District of New York. Harry Reid was involved in it. And so they're writing for the judge, right? That's why that language looks like it looks. So they're saying, look, he was involved in taking out your political opponents, right? Now, I'm not saying the judge is buying that, but he knows who he's writing to. He's considering the audience, including testifying that he and other executives, Cohen, he says that he inflated the value of Trump's assets to secure favorable loans. They say Cohen, his testimony was critical in the attorney general's case, in that he testified that the Trump organization would instruct them to boost their numbers. And it must be acknowledged that Cohen will again be called in March 2024 as a key witness in the Manhattan DA's trial. So that's Alvin Bragg. Now, these testimonies do not come without substantial anxiety and stress. So he's telling the judge, look, we're going after Trump. Now, an additional change in circumstances is that probation officer is also supporting us. Okay, we talked to probation officer. Her name is Sandra. Sandra said that Mr. Cohen has been compliant. He's satisfied the terms and he's satisfied. He's got no criminal charges, blah, blah, blah. He's been good. Now, under the code, they say we're authorized to ask for a reconsideration here. And given the public nature of Cohen's prosecution, it's widely acknowledged that Mr. Cohen has endeavored to provide meaningful assistance to the government on a whole slew of issues. There's no question that him and his family have paid a heavy price, and he's taking criminal responsibilities for his actions of being a liar. Now, as recently as 2022, there have been district court decisions. Now we get to the good stuff. As recently as 2022, there have been district court decisions affirmed by the Second Circuit Court granting early termination of supervised release. Following are three such examples. Now, before we get there, here are the 5 things that they say Cohen has done. Okay, Cohen met with the DA's office in Manhattan, met with Tishy, met with the Southern District of New York, met with Jack Smith. He met with Jack Smith 10 times in the Mueller probe. No, he met with Mueller a bunch of times. He also met with Congress a bunch of times, just to buttress all the work that Cohen has been doing to go after Trump. Nice. Now, as recently as 2022, Cohen's lawyer says it's clear. There are 3 district court decisions that have already been affirmed by the Second Circuit. Let me explain them. 1, United States versus Figueroa Flores, Second Circuit 2022. United States versus Ortiz, Second Circuit 2022. And United States versus Amato, again, May 10th, 2022. Man, 3 cases, all from the Second Circuit? That's fast. So this case, they say the first one, involves a defendant who had been convicted of possession of cocaine. The Second Circuit affirmed the decision that they could terminate his probation early, right? So that supports Michael Cohen. Here's this one. This guy was sentenced to 120 months in prison, evidently. United States versus Ortiz. Second Circuit affirmed that decision and said you can terminate probation, no problem. And the last case, United States versus Amato. The Second Circuit affirmed that and said, no, you can terminate probation early. Wow, 3 amazing cases. Now, the factors that you also need to consider before you get someone off is whether the nature and seriousness of the offense, he's just a liar, okay, he's not a murderer. The nature of his criminal convictions, okay, I think he maybe has one other, I don't know. His compliance with supervised release, okay, he complies. He's rehabilitating himself, whatever, and he's not a danger to the community. So they say, look, it should be noted that if there's anyone who fits the profile for termination of probation supervised release, it's Cohen's. In the 25 months since his home confinement, he's shown that he's meeting all his conditions. He has done 24 hours of government providing support, and so we would respectfully venture that Cohen serves no risk of recidivism. All the goals of supervision have been prepared. He's already served his 36-month prison sentence and was released early, and he's already done all the things. By the way, he never got credited for his First Step Act points, and Mr. Cohen reached out to people to get answers on this. So we're asking that you consider the totality of the circumstances, get rid of the rest of his time, It's never the wrong time to do the right thing, and Cohen has already paid for his crimes, right? You get it. Now, it's worth noting that he faced hardship because of supervised release. Oh, in a society where last-minute plans are the norm, jumping on a plane to visit his parents, one of whom is a Holocaust survivor, pulling on those heartstrings, is impossible. Let's take a look at this judge. Wonder why he put that in there. Judge Furman. Juris Doctor JD, clerk, career, federal service, notable cases, personal. Yeah, I'm not sure what, that's in there for, but interesting. Okay, so he continues on. He says, spontaneous visits to friends or family outside of the boroughs are non-existent. He's on supervised travel, and so he can't get on international travel as well. And so this is frustrating and stressful. And also, Mr. Cohen was invited to go speak at Oxford in Britain. That tells you everything you need to know about Oxford, the Oxford Union, whatever that is. Is that Oxford? I don't know what that is. The Oxford Union in Britain was going to have Michael Cohen speak. Now, in sum and substance, they say, look, Mr. Cohen has complied with the First Step Act in every way, shape, or form. He's clearly demonstrated he's rehabilitated. He pays his tax bills when there's due. He was a model prisoner, committed no infractions, and he is the perfect candidate to be discharged so that the wider community can be tempered by mercy. Justice is tempered by mercy. Respectfully submitted, David M. Schwartz, or ChatGPT. I don't really know. But here we're going to see what the response is from the judge. Now, pay close attention to this section here, where he tells us about these cases. And this is important. You got to really cite your cases in the court. They say, all right, cases United States of America versus Mike Cohen, convicted perjurer, 2 pages, order to show cause. That's a no-no slip. Your lawyer has been called to the principal's office. The judge is writing to Michael Cohen's lawyer, says, on November 29th, David Schwartz, counsel for Michael Cohen, he filed a motion for early termination of supervised release, the file that we just read. Now, in the letter brief, Mr. Cohen, through his lawyer, asserts that, quote, as recently as 2022, those 3 cases we saw, there have been district court decisions that were affirmed by the Second Circuit Court, granting early termination of supervised release. And the court, when they read that, they're like, there have? That's crazy. 3 Second Circuit opinions that are literally on point for exactly what you need? Incredible. He then cites and describes 3 such examples, the cases we just saw, Figueroa Flores, Ortiz, and Amato. But as far as the court can tell, none of these cases exist. Oops. And the court is apparently not alone in being unable to find these cases. New counsel entered a notice of appearance on Mr. Cohen's behalf after the government opposed his motion, and when they got the court's permission, they filed a reply letter. Now, the reply letter asserts that many courts in this district have granted early termination of supervised release in similar circumstances, and after citing to various cases, mostly by the docket number, includes the following footnote. They say such rulings rarely result in reported decisions. Now, while several cases were cited in the initial motion filed by different counsel, undersigned counsel was not engaged at that time and must inform the court that it has been unable to verify those citations. They tell us, now, none of these cases even exist. This page, the 64th whatever citation, refers to a page in the middle of a 4th Circuit decision, and the 4th Circuit decision is not the 2nd Circuit, and that has nothing to do with supervised release. And they say here it's actually this case in the 4th Circuit, 2023. Now, they gave us this number, which corresponds to a decision of the Board of Veterans' Appeals. Don't even know what that is. And this citation from Westlaw, the WL, that appears to correspond to literally nothing at all. Have no idea where it came from. And so the court contacted the clerk of the court for the Second Circuit, like we actually called them, which is what they do, and they found no record of any of these three decisions at all. And they reported that the one listed docket number for Ortiz is not a valid docket number. Oops. Now, in light of the foregoing, the court says Mr. Schwartz, the lawyer, and Mr. Cohen, no later than December 19th, shall provide copies of the three cited decisions to the court. So I don't know where they're going to get them. Now, if he's unable to do so by the 19th, okay, if he can't get these documents over to us, then Mr. Schwartz, Cohen's lawyer, shall by the same date shall cause in writing why he should not be sanctioned pursuant to the rules of civil procedure and the inherent power of this court for citing non-existent cases to the court. How dare you do that to us? Your Honor, hey, dumb court of appeals, dumb judge, grant this. Here's my authority for it. It's not real. Any such submission shall take the form of a sworn declaration and shall provide, among other things, a thorough explanation of how the motion came to cite cases that do not exist and what role, if any, Mr. Cohen played in drafting or reviewing the motion before it was filed. Oh, man. And the court will reserve judgment on Mr. Cohen's pending motion pending the above submission. Signed by Judge Jesse M. Furman. Not happy about that at all. Because who knows what Cohen was saying? Cohen might have said, I'm a lawyer. I'm super smart. And so I did the research on this case. Hey, just include it. Like that could absolutely happen. I can totally envision that. Cohen sending Schwartz something, right? These two guys just say, trading business, whatever. Cohen says, hey, mention the Holocaust survivor thing, right? Put that in there. Hey, go after the Trump stuff. Put that in there, right? Cohen is just kind of articulating what needs to go in there. And now the judge is saying, I want to know who drafted this. Where did it come from? And why did you just include made up cases to me? That's not good in court, right? That is like really bad, all right? Especially in a motion like this. So now that does not bode well for Cohen's request to get his probation and his termination released early. Probably not going to be happening now, especially if Cohen had any involvement in drafting that filing. Not a good day, and you can see why Michael Cohen is not happy about it at all. And so another fun one, my friends. This guy just keeps stepping in it, keeps lying and getting convicted of perjury, now is trying to recreate his whole career against Trump and apparently citing the non-existent cases. And who knows where those came from? There's a lot of AI tools there that just make stuff up. They're just basically word calculators and they just assemble words. So who knows if they came from there or maybe not. Maybe they'll come back and they'll have the actual documents and they'll show them to the court. But we'll be looking forward to covering this one and to seeing where the penalties may lie. Thanks for subscribing, my friends. Thanks for checking out our new shop at robertgovea.com, grabbing a new hat, learn about our watcher symbol, what it means. It's Justicia. It's our watcher watching over everybody, and it is a lot of fun. So check it out, robertgovea.com/shop. Thanks for supporting the show. We'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends, and our final segment on the day is collusion and obstruction by the Biden crime family. Joe Biden colluded with Hunter Biden, obstructing a congressional subpoena. This is now being admitted from the White House. Karine Jean-Pierre came out and said that Joe knew what Hunter was going to be doing. And so Hunter showed up, stood on the Senate side of the Capitol, did not go in and answer questions in violation of a lawful subpoena. We know that Joe has already said that people who don't comply with congressional subpoenas should be prosecuted. But what about people who collude to obstruct a congressional subpoena. Should they be a part of a conspiracy? Because that's interference with an official investigation, isn't it? Well, Jonathan Turley has a very nice article on that. We'll see what he says and how he unpacks it. But Karine is the person who brought this to our attention. She said specifically that Joe knew what Hunter was going to be doing. And does that mean that Joe is going to pardon Hunter? If Hunter comes out and falls on the sword, is he going to give him total get out of jail free pass? Okay, make this go away for me, son, and I'll make sure daddy takes care of you, just like I've been doing my whole life. Here's Karine acknowledging that maybe these two were in cahoots.
And everything else today, did he spend any time watching what his son had to say outside the Capitol?
So just a couple of things on that, and I want to be really clear. Look, as you know, Hunter Biden is a private citizen, and so I certainly would refer you to his representatives. Look, the president was certainly familiar with what his son was going to say.
Oh.
And I think what you saw was from the heart from his son. And you've heard me say this. You've heard the president say this. When it comes to the president and the first lady, they are proud of him continuing to rebuild his life. They are proud of their son.
Yeah, 53-year-old dude.
But I do want to say a couple of things here that I think I can touch on, is that the president is also focused on the important work of the American people. We just went back and forth about what's happening at the border and how he wants to make sure that we secure the border, and the work that he and his team has been doing on negotiating to make sure that there's a bipartisan compromise.
Border's a disaster.
You saw him yesterday stand right next to President Zelensky. There could not have been a more powerful picture with the President of the United States standing next to President Zelensky, who he and the brave people in Ukraine are fighting for their democracy, right? And this is something that the President has led on, the world on, in making sure that President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine have what they need to beat against tyranny, to fight back against Russia's aggression. And, you heard me at the beginning of this briefing talking about how he met with hostages who were held by Hamas and how emotional and impactful that meeting was. That was a two-hour meeting that he had with the family members, and it was important. It was important. He just convened, right, a meeting on infrastructure. So he's going to remain focused.
Not talking about
on
anything.
Making sure that we continue to deliver for the American people. That's
Obviously,
what the president has done since day one.
The message that stood out there was that there was collusion. Said that they were proud of their son, but that the president was certainly familiar with what his son was going to say. He knew all about it. And I think what you saw was from the heart. So we're going to zoom in on that one. The president was certainly familiar with what his son was going to say. Well, Jonathan Turley wrote a piece about this, says they're busted, man. He says Hunter's contempt of Congress has wider consequences here. Now, obviously, Congress is absurd. We've got Jamal pulling fire alarms and so on. But Hunter got a subpoena, and he was supposed to show up. He had two choices. He could have shown up or not, and obviously he didn't. He guaranteed by showing up on the Senate side of the Capitol that the House Sergeant at Arms did not pull him into a hearing room. And that would have been a real tough move. Yesterday, we were a little hard on Comer and Jordan for walking out of that press room or wherever they were at in Congress. Like, I don't know what just happened. They should have had the Sergeant at Arms standing there, flipping his handcuffs around. Just like this. Come on over here, Hunter. What are you doing, bro? Come on over here. Come on, testify, man. Come step over this line, punk. But he didn't, right? Hunter made his little spectacle and then hurried on out of there. So ironically, that would have been a better option. But Shirley says he blew his raspberry. Anyways, many pundits immediately claim this was a clever move, but he disagrees. He says, as I noted, there's no requirement for a formal vote. This subpoena was valid. It's only valid, if they actually do something about it, like if Congress does something. He says, though, this is a great point. It is precisely what then majority Democrats did when they impeached Trump. Now, it's not constitutionally required to hold a vote, but they did. In fact, the subpoena against Hunter involved 3 different authorities, and it is legitimate. Now, this was a spectacle, and Biden and his legal team committed another unforced error. In addition to the one where they ripped up the plea deal, which was insane. They should have taken it that day. I couldn't believe they didn't. But few people expected Hunter to testify. The evidence against him is overwhelming, as shown in the new federal indictment. He and his uncles were allegedly involved in a major scheme, and Hunter simply could have done what prior witnesses have done, just gone in, taken the fifth. That's what former IRS official Lois Lerner did when Republicans were going after her. But now, Hunter can be held in contempt of Congress, and it's going to force the hand of Merrick Garland. Garland, as we covered the trial, went after Bannon, going after Navarro, and so now they're going to have to play a game. Now, there is another problem. This is the big one. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, she said that Biden was familiar with what the son was going to say, meaning that the president spoke with the son. Now, if that's true, that was a breathtaking mistake, says Turley. If they colluded with another, not good. One of the foremost obvious potential articles of impeachment that he's laid out previously is about special treatment being given to Hunter, allowing felonies to expire, warnings about police raids, and so on. But if Biden has enlisted White House staff to actively push challenge accounts of his conduct and attack Republicans, that could be another abuse of power inquiry. So if this is true, if Biden was speaking with Hunty about committing a potential criminal act of contempt and advising him on that, then that could be a big problem. Hunter was refusing to give testimony focused not on his own role, but on his father's role, right? Hunter was talking about daddy. If daddy is going to tell son not to talk about daddy, that's a problem. The House can pursue evidence on that conversation and how the president may have supported his son's efforts. Now, this is bizarre, right? Hunter, he opened a new potential front for prosecution, and he really just angered them. Like, there's no doubt he just angered the DOJ, which is crazy because it's his dad's DOJ. If the same laws applied the same way that it was to Bannon, Hunter could find himself indicted immediately. Maybe they will. I doubt it. But in Bannon's case, the subpoena was issued at the end of September. He was indicted in November. Took 4 days. So if Biden himself maintained, President Biden himself has said that you can't deny subpoenas. So Karine is confirming that they did collude on this, says the president knew what this was about, and Hunter was supposed to testify about daddy. So Joe is obstructing. He's witness tampering right now as it stands. And so this is Karine. Karine is asked, no, that's not the clip that I wanted. Although I was going to bring that up. That was not the actual clip that I wanted. That was her outfit. That was going to be the second clip that I wanted. But the first one apparently is this one. Let's see if I got this one right. Okay, here is what Karine said. So we'll go to the John Deere thing in a minute. To forget I showed that one. Here's this one. Here, this is what Karine said. White House claims no evidence exists against the wrongdoing guy. Right,
people at home.
Here's Karine, John Deere.
The impeachment inquiry, the House of Representatives voted last night to formally authorize the impeachment inquiry that started in September. For a lot of people at home who only view this in very broad strokes, could you explain to people why the president interacted with so many of his relatives or associates and why he continues to deny any interaction? How should people think about this?
Well, let's be very clear here. And I talked about this yesterday, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. And the president put out a statement yesterday that was very clear. It's, what we're seeing from House Republicans is wasted time.
Okay.
And it is certainly
waste of time.
Baseless political stunt. That's what we're seeing. And they're leaving. House Republicans are leaving this week to go, enjoy a nice holiday, right? As most Americans should. But what happened to the funding to Ukraine? You just asked me about Ukraine. They haven't been able to get that done. They haven't been able to help us fix what's going on at the border. They haven't been able to get that done. They haven't been able to start a conversation on how we're going to avert a shutdown in January. They haven't been able to do that. And so, look, there's been zero evidence. Zero evidence. You can ask me about engagement and what the president has done with his family in conversation, but there's no evidence. But there's no evidence. There is no evidence that the president has done wrongdoing. There's none. Absolutely none. None. And that is just a fact. You've heard it from Republicans themselves. So they're wasting their time. Instead of doing the work on behalf of the American people, they go after the president's family. That's a waste of time.
All right, so that's our Karine deer tractor, basically both making the same sounds, bunch of noise, vroom, 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 in the White House. Not much going on there. And so that is what they talk about. Now, James Comer came out responding to this after the House formalized the impeachment inquiry. Here is what he sounded like. We have a couple clips from Comer. They were trying to get their messaging in order. And here is what he said after the situation with Hunter broke down. Says that the House has now voted to formalize an official inquiry, and we are getting to business.
That means we have a lot more standing in court when we go to court to get people to comply with our subpoenas. We also have a lot of information requested from various administrative agencies and offices. They have obstructed our investigation. They have not complied with our request. And this gives us a greater standing in court. So we expect to get information quicker. We expect to depose people quicker now. So this was a very positive step forward in our investigation.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. What did you make of Hunter's performance today and just your update there?
Well, I mean, look, this guy's been given special treatment his entire life. I've never seen such a performance that was full of entitlement and arrogance as that.
It's true.
I mean, he just defied a congressional subpoena. We've heard the videos of where his dad said that people should be held accountable for defying a congressional subpoena. You know, the media would go on and on about anyone that wouldn't comply with a congressional subpoena. They should be locked up. A lot of media sources would write.
They charge
now
them with
it'll be
crimes.
interesting to see what the headlines in the papers say tomorrow. Look, we're not going to give Hunter Biden special treatment. We're not going to treat him any better or worse than any other witness. He's a key witness in a major investigation of public corruption at the highest levels. Yep. We have been very transparent. We've been very meticulous in this investigation. We're now in the deposition phase. We gave him a lawful subpoena, and we expect him to come before the House Oversight Committee and be deposed.
He does not want to do that, and he got, like I said, he got a pretty big gift as far as these charges, and I want to talk about that for a second. Last week, you joined Jake Tapper on CNN, an interview that really irritated me. You alleged something that I feel is pretty obvious, that the federal tax charges against Hunter Biden, coming just days before he was scheduled to be deposed, are very likely a political maneuver to give Hunter cover so he doesn't have to lie under oath when he is asked about the influence peddling scheme and how involved Joe Biden really was. It's very obvious when you think about how the DOJ really works, especially when it comes to the Bidens, when you think about what the whistleblowers have told us. Here is how that went.
Well, that's a good point, because the DOJ has already done that, by the way, right? They've already given him, they tried to not charge him, then they gave him a diversion deal. Now they're just like ramping this up a little bit. So they've already got a pattern of 3 attempts essentially to cover this up. And why wouldn't they do it again? So they're going to walk through the Jake Tapper interview. We'll fast forward through that. But here is what the White House says about this. This guy's Ian Sams. He is the White House counsel press person who comes out and gives talking points, the spokesman. Here is what he said on CNN when he was explaining the Republicans and their impeachment inquiry is mostly meaningless, not following the proper process.
Well, there's a process you're supposed to follow in congressional oversight, and these guys just haven't followed it. They've blazed right through. We've offered over and over and over again throughout this Congress to meet with them, to talk with them, to hear about any legitimate informational needs that they may have. And time again, they've ghosted us. They don't respond to questions that we have for them. They don't reach out to have meetings. So they've just blazed through this process. And there's a reason why. The reason why is that this is a preordained outcome. Don't forget, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who right now is probably the most powerful member of the House Republican Conference, introduced articles of impeachment on day 1 of Joe Biden's presidency, before he could even be the president, do anything. They've decided from the moment that he took office that they were going to impeach him, and this is a natural continuation of that process. And now what they've done is wasted millions and millions of taxpayer dollars on a fishing expedition trying to drum up an excuse for it. So
millions of dollars of wasted money. That's our fiscally conservative White House counsel spokesman. They're not concerned about all of their insane investigations that sprawled all across America for the last 3 years going after protesters, but they're going to say that what the Republicans are doing by investigating Joe and Hunter, which has mounds of criminality, all that's just a waste of money. I think that's actually good money. We don't want corrupt bureaucrats in charge of Washington. even though we got a lot of them. Here's Schumer, one example of them, saying that this is a clown car impeachment proceeding. Here is what Schumer sounded like in the Senate. They're upset about this.
The Senate's bipartisan package of the defense bill stands in glaring contrast with the partisan race to the bottom we're seeing in the House. Just look at the difference between these two bodies. While the Senate is strengthening America's national security, House Republicans are wasting time on a clown car impeachment inquiry that will get nowhere. The House Republican impeachment inquiry is the definition of unserious. The House should be looking at the Senate right now for an example of how both sides can work together in a meaningful way to pass serious legislation to improve the lives of the American people.
Oh, gosh. They just passed the NDAA, another $900 billion of garbage. Plus, it guts our rights again by extending FISA. It's all just a joke. So there is too much uniformity in Washington, right? When there is something they really want to get through that the intelligence agencies want, they get it through. And of course, they did that today, much to our detriment. And a lot of Republicans voted for that as well. We got Jeffries coming up. He's saying, you can't impeach a president's son. We're not trying to do that. Definitely trying to impeach Hunty. Here's what he says.
To answer the question, isn't this, some people would say it's a double standard. So if this hits the House floor, are you voting no on contempt?
That would be correct.
Isn't it a double
correct.
standard then?
Yeah.
If this goes to the House floor, you're going to vote no on contempt, even though you guys voted yes to hold others in contempt? What are you going to do here? It sounds like a double standard. Great question.
Listen, the so-called investigation underway by House Republicans is a joke. It's embarrassing.
So if Republicans say that, like if Steve Bannon said, this is a joke, this is embarrassing, does that mean he doesn't get indicted? Is that how that works?
There is no evidence that President Biden broke the law. This is an impeachment inquiry of the president. You can't impeach the president's son.
No, but you can investigate.
There is no evidence that President Joe Biden broke the law. There's no evidence that President Joe Biden committed an impeachable offense. There is no evidence that President Biden engaged in any wrongdoing. This has been an ongoing investigation, understand, from the very beginning on January 3rd when they couldn't get their act together, 15 different dysfunctional votes before they caved to the extremists. From the very beginning of this Congress, they've been after President Joe Biden, and they want to try to get to him in any way possible, including targeting President Biden's family. No evidence in January, no evidence in February, no evidence in March, no evidence in April, no evidence.
All right, you get it. There's plenty of evidence. They just keep saying it over and over and over, and you're going to see it. It's a talking point. It's a strategy. They just say it doesn't exist. Like it's a lie. Like it's just an outright lie. They've just decided we're going to lie to you. There's tons of evidence. Obviously, we've seen it here, show after show, but they just say it doesn't exist and they're cowards and liars, right? That's how you kind of know that they're a little bit nervous about this.
They're always there when you don't need them. But when there's actually something of consequence, they cave. They spent years, and particularly this year, investigating Joe Biden. They came up with nothing. And they admitted as much. So now they're going to have a formal impeachment inquiry so they can find even more of nothing. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what crimes they even want to suggest Joe Biden committed.
Bribery.
All they do know is Donald Trump wants this.
Obstruction.
Donald Trump needs this. Donald Trump is going to make their life difficult if they don't give it to him. Those moderate Republicans don't want Donald Trump coming after them and ginning up a primary against them. And so they're going to do this to dilute the stain of his former impeachments, to gratify their master in Mar-a-Lago.
Dilute the stains of his former impeachment, right? So, yeah, everybody's going to be impeaching everybody now, right? Republicans are going to impeach them. You guys impeached Trump twice. Guess what happens after the fact? We're going to have, indictments? So maybe Trump will also do some indictments. Maybe nervous about that. We got one final one before we jump into the Republicans. Here's Swalwell. Now, he was there with Hunter on the day of his little speech defending him, and it's weird to watch the guy who made bang bang with a Chinese spy called Fang Fang, why he's out there with Hunter. I don't know. Were they making bang bang with Chinese spies together? I don't know.
They said multiple times he could testify publicly or privately, and he said he wanted to testify publicly, so he showed up.
He did.
Okay, that is the most smooth brain answer ever. Okay, this guy's a congressman. He basically, is that like, would he have given that same standard to Bannon and everybody on the January 6th committee? Obviously not.
answer any of our questions. He said he wanted it to be in public with cameras there, but we tried to ask him questions. He didn't say anything. So what do you think he's afraid of, or what do you think he's hiding? Why?
Yeah, Eric.
I don't know what James Comer is afraid of, because he said Hunter could testify publicly. Hunter showed up publicly, and then Comer no longer wanted him publicly.
That's the Congressional. I'm not that, you are, right? I'm not a doo-doo head, you are, right? That's our Congressman Swalwell. Unbelievable. Genius, okay? Those are the people who are in charge. All right. So here are the Republicans. Now, Jim Jordan had a comment, and for some reason looks like that link didn't save, so we'll look that one up while we jump over to James Comer and Byron Donalds. Byron Donalds is also saying that there is not any time for immunity for Hunter. Okay, we're not going to tolerate it. Here's what Donald says.
And look, and I will say, with respect to Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, they were White House officials. So there is a clear argument that they were protected by executive privilege under the Trump administration. Hunter Biden is not a part of any administration. There is no executive privilege that protects him from coming to Congress and sitting for a deposition, because he's been subpoenaed to do so. But Larry, at the end of the day, the reason why Hunter is running, the reason why the White House is obfuscating, the reason why House Democrats are pounding the table because they don't have the facts, is because the Biden family has been complicit in a foreign corruption scheme. Joe Biden knew about it. Joe Biden took money from it. And I believe that Joe Biden is a co-conspirator in violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, an act, by the way, that has thrown other officials in jail. Yeah. Paul Manafort, the one that is most famous that comes to mind, for less violations than what Hunter Biden is accused of. And look, all
right, so we've got Byron Donalds. James Comer also came out and gave us an update. Here is what he says, talking about Hunter must comply, and we are moving forward. We expect you at the White House to comply with our requests.
We've made our point very clear today. Evidence uncovered has shown a very disturbing trend by the Biden family. We've spent months in this investigation accumulating evidence. We have a simple question that I think an overwhelming majority of Americans have. What did the Bidens do to receive the tens of millions of dollars from our enemies around the world? Today's unanimous vote by our conference showed that we are united as a conference. We expect to have people honor our subpoenas. We want to wrap this investigation up, but obviously you get to the deposition phase before you wrap up an investigation. So that's where we are. We're very pleased with the vote today. I think that sent a message loud and clear to the White House. We expect you to comply with our information requests and our subpoenas.
Well, they're not going to do it, James. All right, so what are they going to do? Here is what Jim Jordan has been talking about, saying that one of Hunter's prosecutors is going to come and testify. Here was Jordan recently.
Guys, call for number one. Assistant U.S. Attorney for the DOJ out of Wilmington, Delaware, part of the...
Leslie Wolf, one of the key investigators, is no longer with the DOJ. She is out, and I posted an X about this, saying it is fleeing the crime scene, right? She doesn't want to be there anymore, and apparently she is gone.
This up. Is it that simple?
Well, I think it was the whole investigation, as you pointed out, Bill. It took him 5 years. It's still ongoing now. It's now a special counsel. David Weiss been named special counsel. But Leslie Wolf, according to Mr. Chaplin, Mr. Ziegler is the lady who said we're not going to look into campaign finance concerns that Mr. Chaplin, Mr. Ziegler, and others of the investigative team thought should be examined. She's the one who said you can't use the term big guy when you do any interviews. You can't talk about political figure number one, who we all know was Joe Biden. So we want to ask her questions about all that. And maybe most importantly, why the investigation decided to let the tax years 2014-2015, when the bulk of the Burisma income was coming into Hunter Biden, why they let the statute of limitations lapse for those years. My theory is when you get into Burisma, you get to the White House. I mean, it's one thing to charge Hunter Biden on a gun charge in Delaware. That doesn't involve Joe Biden. But you get into Burisma, it does, because this is a Ukrainian energy company that paid Hunter Biden so much money. So we want to ask her some questions about that as well.
And then what will happen to that testimony? I think there was a little bit of confusion yesterday about what Hunter Biden said he was coming to do or not. So this is a closed-door deposition, but will you be able to release a transcript of that, or do you hold that?
You hold those transcripts. We will release them at some point, but you don't want to release it until you've interviewed everyone else, because you release it, there's sort of a template that the next witness who you want to bring in has for what questions are coming. So typical investigations, you do these depositions behind closed doors. There's a transcript obviously developed, and then at some point you release the transcript, you do a report. But in an impeachment inquiry, there will be some kind of report obviously at some point if we decide to move to articles of impeachment.
You mentioned these years, 2014 and 2015. Do you consider those to be the most serious charges?
Yeah, because I think the theory of this case is, I think it's an old story. You got a politician who does certain things, those actions benefit his family financially, and then there's an effort to conceal it. Yeah, I think the effort to cover it up and conceal it was, the way David Weiss and Leslie Wolf handled this investigation. But if you really go back to the start, it's Hunter Biden's involvement with Burisma. I say this all the time. There are 4 fundamental facts here. Fact number 1, Hunter Biden gets put on the board. Fact number 2, he's not qualified to be on the board of Burisma, this Ukrainian energy company. He said so himself. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden, weigh in with your father, help us with the pressure we are under from the prosecutor. Key fact number 4 is Joe Biden goes to Ukraine just 3 days after he gets that request and conditions the funding of Ukraine that's already been approved on the firing of that very prosecutor who's applying the pressure to the company that Hunter Biden sits on the board of. Those facts are, I think, clear as could be, and that is sort of the pattern. This is when it's all started. And then you have the actions, of course, with David Weiss and the Justice Department and how they left those key tax years out of any charging, even though Mr. Ziegler, Mr. Shapley, and the rest of the investigative team thought they should have been charged.
And they arguably covered it up. Leslie Wolf is fleeing the scene of the crime, and we know that the whistleblowers have mounds of problems with the investigation, saying that they raised flags multiple times. They were stonewalled. Different investigatory avenues were rejected. They wanted to go and search a storage unit, for example, and Leslie Wolf tipped off Hunter's defense team, and so now that begs the question about obstruction and more collusion. What else did Joe Biden do? What else did he know? And what level of involvement did he have with Hunter, especially recently, and at least with this little press conference and deposition? Snub, we want to get to the bottom of it. Congress looks like they're going to continue to investigate it. We're going to follow along as well, my friends. And so thank you for subscribing to our channel, wherever it is you're watching this. Thanks for visiting robertgovea.com to sign up for our daily newsletter. That way, if you see any stories that you want to forward to a friend or family member, easy to do it. We've also got our brand new shop at robertgovea.com, where we've got our newest gear, our Watcher hat, our Hillary Clinton flip-flopping Hillary sandals, and more at robertgovea.com/shop. Thanks for grabbing something for the holidays. Thanks for supporting the show and wearing your swag out there, my friends. We'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. And we are covering some good ground here. And I want to jump in to your questions and your comments and see what you have to say about all of this and more. And so let's jump right into our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our friends on the Rumbles, our friends on the YouTubes. We also have our members-only community, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to go over there for our members-only after-party. YouTube friends, grab the Telegram link in the community tab section on YouTube, and we'll see you over there. But who is in the house on the day? We got Wendy W. in the house. Wendy W. is a supporter over on the YouTubes. Welcome aboard, Wendy. Great to see you. And thank you, V, for clipping away for us on the day. We got Vientika says, people talk about AI causing all these problems in the future. The reality is that it isn't AI that's going to be the problem. It's that the ultra-rich and ultra-lazy will abdicate control to AI. These are the same people who will readily turn control of your life over to a ham sandwich. Yeah, and AI, I think it's a little bit more overblown than we were initially, than a lot of people were initially claiming. And I think we're seeing some of the limitations of it as we speak. We got Rico here, says we need 12 chairs, a tree called Liberty, and a Bible Constitution. And we got this one from B. Torn. says Trump should continue his gag order fight for precedent on principle. Trump should continue his gag order fight for precedent and based on principle. I think it's a good call. Talking about New York, just say, hey, you want to anchor this in, just why not? Take it up, go back down, file your motion to vacate the contempt order. Then when that's denied, appeal that and take it from there. Good comment, B-Torn. NY says, law is the practice of religion. Trump's lawyers didn't perform the right sacrifice on the right day. You know, there is some truth to that. I mean, they say that it might be good, it might be better to be sentenced to prison. If you're going to be sentenced, it's probably better to be sentenced in the morning than in the afternoon, because the judge is fresh thinking. By the afternoon, they're just tired and want to go home. You know, stuff like that. So you think it's like about the law, about like the rules, and the judge just might be cranky that day. You never know. Hey, Greenfield School. What's up, Greenfield School? Very nice dono from our friends over on Rumble. Thank you for that one. Says, thanks for all your hard work. Well, thank you, Greenfield. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Wouldn't be able to do it without you, my friend, so I really appreciate it. We've got a lot of road ahead of us, and we're excited about it. We got NY says, Jack Smith appealed a ruling that he won. Beyond standing for the unusual move, CNN will focus on these trivial things outside of the issues with Jack Smith. Trump prosecutions have no time-place barrier. They will arrest and try him despite an election. The special counsel in Hunter and Joe Biden case and their casework with an efficiency of a federal worker. Here's proof of concept from John. This is not a stake, John. This is not a stake, John. This is not a steak, John. I don't know how to read that. Say it. It looks like a saltine cracker with the watcher symbol on it, which is a beautiful proof of concept, John. And so I think what you're saying is you can burn that on anything, which is pretty dang cool, actually. And you know, saltine crackers are already delicious, but they're that much more delicious with the watcher on them. So thank you, John. And that's some cool ideas you got. It's cool capabilities that you've got there. Lots to do with that. Thank you for sharing that. Very cool. And thanks for doing it. It looks awesome. It looks delicious. We got NY says, CNN is still ignoring Smith is appealing a ruling that he won. The only reason would be the timing. They know the election is heavily affected. NY says, is Liz Cheney also worried about fair trials and unbiased equal tribunals? No. A biased commission is not a sign of a free society. Cheney wasn't, quote, selected to be on January 6th for her legendary judicial temperament. She sought the spot with an agenda, which was, quote, to get Trump. And I think that she's probably right in line with the Cheney family. You know, Trump, I think, when I zoom out on this, I think it's really a battle between almost like families, you know, like political dynasties or like political power blocks. So Cheney is still in alignment with Dad, right? Liz Cheney is still in alignment with Dick Cheney. They're both war maniacs. Trump was not a pro-war guy. So Liz Cheney is now this new figure who is anti-Trump, which is in alignment with Dick Cheney's pro-war capabilities. But the fact that the left can't see that is just wild to me. Anyways, that's a good one from NY. Chubby's here. Says, I can't believe the AI failed to include all the Cohen perjury incidents as well. Yeah, they should have asked the AI about that. He would have cited all the Cohen problems. Good comment from Chubby. Nice to see you. We got 1R5 says, at least the biggest crooks in D.C. have stopped saying no one is above the law. They changed their new mantra to there's no evidence. There is no evidence. Yeah, and those narratives will continue to shift. And I like how the goalpost moved for Hunter. And he said, my dad was not financially involved. Oh, so he was involved? So he then delivered value through what sort of mechanism? By showing up at your dinner parties, Hunter? And then you got paid financially, so your dad was giving you value, and then you just pocketed the money? Okay, that sounds like bribery to me. All right. So good to see you, 1R5. Thanks for the nice dono. Knox says, happy Thursday, all. I recall a ChatGPT sanction like months ago. This guy obviously missed that. Yeah, and I don't know if it was ChatGPT or AI or what. Sort of feels like it probably is the most obvious explanation. But yeah, Knox, I think we might have talked about that on a morning stream for our membos. I remember that story too. It was like wild. It was the same thing. It just made up cases. It's pretty funny. Vientika says the Wiccans say that which you send out comes back times 3. Others say there's such a thing as karma. Realistically, these things point out the same fact. There is no such thing as an isolated system. People repeat what they say or have experienced. The fathers of these people have fancied themselves our betters and have used their power to inspire a detrimental culture. Now their children are little more than a farrago of lies, hypocrisy, laziness, and idiocy. Have you guys gotten Vientikis' new book yet? He's got 2 books now that are out on Barnes & Noble. And so if he's dropping the link out there in the chat, I mean, you should definitely check them out. Good books. Knox says, I saw a great meme with KJP that said that, on that insane Christmas dance, Biden was the flower head. All right, let's take a look at this one. I think I saw this one. Somebody posted this one. So Jill Biden ruined Christmas, obviously, with her little bizarre dance. And okay, we just checked it, and I think it's accessible. Here we go. Here is Christmas. Oh, okay, so that's Christmas at the White House. Yeah, well, looks like they're having a good time. All right, so thank you for that one, Knox. Pretty hilarious. Over on Rumble, we've got Rivka, the Jade Gamer. What's up, our Rumble friends? Says, so Joe Biden obstructed congressional business by eyewitness tampering? Like, one of the things that Enron did? Yeah, hopefully they get investigated. Hopefully Joe Biden is expeditiously investigated by the DOJ. Not holding our breath. Object Class Keeters here says, when we have divided government, Dems call for working together. When unified, they ignore Republicans at every turn, and they still blame Republicans. And they're good at it, man. Yeah, they don't play around. Republicans get blindsided all over the place, but the Dems don't play. Ravicus says, there should be a law against gaslighting, saying things that are not true over and over and over again, right? Tell the same lie long enough and people start to believe it. Yeah, we got free speech, and so we just have to slam them back with the free speech, but I understand your point, Ravicus. Spud says, Jeffries keeps saying that there is no evidence. Jeffries should worry that his district in Brooklyn is turning redder, and he may find out there are, quote, no votes for him in November. Hey, Allegan says, did you see that Leslie Wolf left the DOJ? I did see that. Yeah. Fleeing the crime scene, sinking ship, running away from the sinking ship. And so, hey, we got Petra, just became a member. Good to see you, Petra. Welcome aboard. And so thank you, my friends, for those very generous donos. Very grateful for all of your support here. We also appreciate Mick Kevin becoming a member. Welcome aboard, Mick Kevin, as a member. And so, hey, new members, make sure you grab the private Telegram link. So if you're on YouTube, navigate over to the community tab on the channel homepage, scroll all the way down, grab the Telegram link. That's where we have our 24/7 chat, and that's where we hang out for our after party. So YouTube members on Telegram, watchers on Locals. Let's say hello to our friends on the X platform and see who is joining us on X. Do we have anybody joining us today? That's not the X website. This is it. And let's see if anybody is watching over here on Elon's platform. 21 viewers. I'll take it. All right. It's good to see you, my friends. Hey, double digits is a good day. 21 X friends. Nice to see you, my friends. Let's see who is joining us in the comments section. We've got some nice comments. We've got Steve. Oh, you're a bad one. She's a bad one. Mr. Grinch. Something. You're a bad one. Mr. Grinch. Steven's telling us about the judge. Demainer says, so sad. A Maine nurse just got arrested. That's nice. Oh, good. Another insurrectionist nurse rounded up. Good. Good. I hope so, right? What's she going to be doing? Taking care of sick people? Insurrecting their health away from them? Ridiculous, right? It is sad. Demainer. Pathetic. All right. JB says, Sideshow Bob lies again. Does that something about daddy. community corners here. Rob, here is Trump's court delay chart through January 31st. What is going on here? So the calendar date, days since 12/6, quickest restart date. Whoa, man. Hey, Al Holman, did you just do the math on that? Al Holman just put the chart together through. Yeah, so if the calendar date, days since 12/6, quickest restart date. Interesting calendar. Quickest restart date. Interesting. Okay, so that's from Al Holman. Yeah, so people are already doing the math on it. We got George is here. We tagging everybody. Tubes are working. George is face palming at Chuck Schumer. Dark Side. I don't know if you've come across this yet, but a recent Rasmussen poll said 1 in 5 mail-in voters are admitting to cheating in the elections. I haven't read that yet, but I did see the headline on that, so I will take a look at that. I wanted to see how they actually drafted that. Like, did they draft the question, like, did you commit a crime? Or did they say, did you assist somebody in helping them vote? And then they would know, like, if you assisted them or you did this, like, they would ask about the conduct, not about the criminality, if that makes sense. So I'm interested in that story for that reason as well, Dark Side. Bob says, 34 viewers at the end of the second segment. Woo, we're making it. Fred Pedamonte and says, yeah, says Furman is Jewish. There you go, on Wikipedia. So that's why they probably pulled on that heartstring a little bit. Never watch Rob after drinking homemade mead. Fred says Trump can't speak or respond in New York or DC, but we all can. And my friends, thank you for following us over on the X platform. 24 you here today. Amazing. Rob Govea, ESQ is a place to follow. We also have our community called Watching the Watchers Community, where you can join in other members, follow each other out there in the wild on the X platform. Just search for Watching the Watchers. And we're not real sure what's happening with these communities yet on X, but that's where people are hanging out. And so you can follow them along as the show and the stories progress. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We had a couple very nice donos come in. From Dolphin Fan is the man, bringing in 5 new membos. Thank you, Dolphin. We got Wendy C. Petra came in. We got Mick Kevin, Austin Libby, Dan DeFlavis is coming in, courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man in the house. We've also got Air Force Vet. What's up, Air Force Vet? Welcome, sir. Thank you for your service, sir. Is bringing in 1 membo. Dan M is coming in, courtesy of Air Force Vet in the house. And then Rose for Life says, does Miss Wolf think that we are going to forget her malfeasance? She's probably hopeful of that. I'm just going to go retire in the Bahamas. Yeah, have a nice hunter prosecution now. No, we're not forgetting who she was at all. And so, my friends, thank you for those very, very nice donos. Thank you for the support for the work that we do here. We got Wendy C, who's Wendy C. Wendy C's got labor pains, man. It's right around the corner. Man, it's getting up, about to burst, about to pop Carol, whole thing around. And says, LOL, appreciate you. I appreciate you back, Wendy C. Thanks for being a member for 8 months. Baby's right around the corner. I think it's going to be a soccer player. You can see the kicking around in there. And so thanks, Wendy, for being a member for 8 months. Woo, another baby in the house. Amazing. Okay, my friends. And so that is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our members only after party. We do members streams in the morning. So become a member. Join us in the morning tomorrow. Join us on Saturday morning on Locals. Also, check out our website, robertgovea.com. We've got our new shop where you can get this great new hat along with some Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden sandals. Nice quality stuff. And we'd love it if you went over there and got some swag. And if you get something, I'd love to see some pictures of it. And then we can post some of that stuff if you're okay with that. But robertgovea.com/shop to grab the latest gear. Thanks for checking that out. Before we wrap it up, my friends, want to say thank you to our mods and our meme smiths who keep things nice and orderly on the show. Our friend Vientikis Prime, K-Bean, we got Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, our meme smiths, Jeegum Geegum, Nathan, N810, and Sleepy Dog Lee, creating some beautiful memes for us. But my friends, that is it for us on the day. We are going to be back here tomorrow to get into it all again, and we need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.